Pool Pro podcast. Do you need a tip on how to build a super tight pool route, especially when it comes to hiring employees? Either way, this podcast is for you. I am your host, Michelle Kavanaugh. Thank you for joining us today. We're hoping that you take away a tip or two to help you with your business. My guest today is somebody that I've had on the podcast before. So excited to have him. He has a great resource of information. He was a Fortune 50 executive, Silicon Valley startups involved in that, and then actually left that industry and started his own pool service company. He found that interesting and started it up by himself. He was the only employee at the time, and then build that up to 50 employees and then servicing residential and commercial pools. Probably a little over 2,000 a week were serviced. And then he decided to retire and live the good life and sold his business. So thank you so much, Fred, for joining us. We really appreciate you giving us some of your knowledge and helping us along.
You're welcome. I'm glad to help and give back to the industry.
You bet. So on my website, mkconsultingservices.com, Fred and I have an article out there in regards to how to hire your first employee. Now, this really relates to anybody who's a one-man show or one-woman show, and they decide, you know what, I've reached a point where I can't do any more on my own, and I have to make a decision if I'm just going to be okay with, my current revenue, or if I really want to grow and scale. And so the goal of that particular article was to talk about how do you really prepare to hire your first person. Mm-hmm. And Fred Ross, we had him on the Pool Pro podcast a while ago, and this is a topic that I want to explore some more. So Fred, again, thank you again for coming on. Can you talk a little bit about, preparing for hiring your first person? Because you obviously have done this with at least 40 some employees. What do you have to offer that's going to help us move forward?
Sure. Well, Michelle, what's interesting is the first employee is the very hardest.
Yes.
Employee number 2 is just as hard. And the reasons is many guys, I don't care what trade you're in, the first pool, they struggle because, well, he doesn't do it as good as I do. He doesn't do it the way that I do. I might as well, if you want it done right yourself, if you want it done right, you got to do it yourself. There's a lot of that goes through their minds. And so you've got to make sure that you're approaching this properly with your attitude has to be such that, okay, I understand that whoever I hire is never going to do it as good as I do it myself. Okay. That's kind of the first thing you got to get in your mind. And then secondly, have you really thought about the financial impact on yourself?
Yeah.
So, are you going to grow your business? You got to make a real commitment to this because it's going to take a while to train an employee. To be trained, it's going to take a long time. So you have to factor that in that you've only got so much revenue coming in. Yeah. In many cases, that means you personally, whatever you were taking out of the business every month, you're not going to be able to take out. So if it takes you a month to replace that, because you bring on a guy and he takes over your routes and then you go out and do repairs and you start bringing on more customers. Hey, maybe you can do it in a month and it only cost you 1 month's salary of your new guy. Maybe it's $4,000 or $5,000, right?
Right.
But if it takes longer to get more customers, or it takes longer to replace that revenue to pay for yourself, it could be months. That 5 could turn into 10, 15, 20, 25, $30,000 real quick.
Yeah. So preparing is really important then.
Yeah. Your financial planning is very important.
Yeah, it really is.
Know where every dollar's coming from and every dollar's going. And if you don't have that accounting system or that level of detail in place, do that first before you even think about hiring the first guy.
Absolutely. And for those of you who need assistance doing that, you can go to my website, mkconsultingservices.com. I have an actual package out there where I help you with forecasting and goal setting. Be happy to help you. Just schedule a call with me and anytime that you're available. So really the 3 steps we have in our article, Fred, I just want to summarize those, is building a tight route, managing expenses, and building capital. Obviously, the first thing Fred just mentioned was looking at your financials, doing some estimating of what you're going to do for the year, revenue and expense wise. And then you have to build. We'll talk about the managing expenses side to kind of help with that. So talk about building a tight route. Okay.
Building a tight route. And this goes back to, I think, more route businesses and route trades. And it would be the Maytag repairman scenario where you're the on-call electrician or plumber. This is more for anybody that's been in a route business. So the tighter you can make that, the ultimate would be, and you got to keep this in mind as you go about your days, whatever. The ultimate would be to park your truck and service several customers.
Yeah.
And you park your truck and take care of Mrs. Jones and Mrs. Smith and two others, and then go back to your truck and move your truck a block and service 4 or 5 more customers.
Yeah.
Imagine how tight what that would do for your business, how that increases the profitability of every single customer because you're getting rid of windshield time, you're reducing your vehicle expenses because that's one of your biggest expenses.
Yes.
So in addition,
especially right now.
especially right now. So you're going to put an employee in that truck until you're adding his wages expenses, but you're also having all of his vehicle expenses as well. So the tighter you can make that, the better. This is just setting the stage to help his success. It also will make it a lot easier for your employee if he's not having to look at Google Maps for 15 minutes to get from pool 1 to pool 2.
Right. Well, I love your referral thing too. So you can get your customers involved in that, right, Fred? If you have your customers, you have an incentive for your current customers to refer their neighbors to you, and maybe even you said give them like a free month service or something if you close one of their neighbors.
Yeah, when we first started out, we had to be really generous with that and say, yeah, we'll give you a free month service or maybe 2 month service because, you were new and trying out, and maybe Mrs. Jones really liked you. He wasn't sure she's going to refer you or not. So you'd say, well, let me add a little extra incentive on that, and we'll give you 2 months of free service or a month of free service if you refer me. And, we pick up the new customer. And then as you start to grow, you could do less and less and less of that. So maybe it becomes, you give her $100, or maybe it becomes a Starbucks card, or maybe it becomes nothing, a thank you card. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's time, how much it's going to cost you for these referral fees is going to become less and less. But when you're brand new, it doesn't hurt. And it's not seen as weird or anything, I don't think anymore. It's just a little bit extra incentive for them to remember when they're talking to their neighbor. Oh yeah, I'm going to get a whole month free if I refer Fred over.
Right. And who better to sell your service than a neighbor who actually knows them already, and and they're going to listen to people that they know and that they like. If they have a recommendation, they'll listen to them way more than they're going to listen to you. So I think I love that idea of recruiting them as salespeople for you.
Absolutely. Oh, way more. I see it every day still in my own neighborhood, whether it's on Facebook or just conversations that are had at the mailbox. Hey, I need a plumber. You know anybody I could call? Hey, I'm not happy with my gardener. You know anybody I could call? How's your gardener? I mean, neighbors have these conversations every day. If you don't think they do, you're kidding yourself. They do. They have them face to face, and they have them on Facebook, and they have them in their neighborhood Facebook groups, and they have them in their next door groups. And there's a lot more of that going on out there than you think.
And they're not going to refer you if you suck at your job, right? Right, Fred? So what is the key here for having great service?
You got to be fantastic at your job. And what's funny is being fantastic at your job doesn't mean that the pool never has any leaves in it, or it's clean all the time, or your water chemistry is good all the time. Of course, that's important, but that's a given. The customer expects that. What really makes you stand out is when you answer your phone in a couple of rings.
Yes, communication is the key here.
You actually talk to them, and you don't hide and don't answer your phone, and you don't try to text everything, which drives me nuts with the millennial. They think everything's got to be a text. No.
Yeah.
Some things are appropriate for email. Some things are appropriate for phone calls. Some things are appropriate for face-to-face communications. So you are not going to build a strong bonding relationship with your customer if you're hiding behind your communications. You have to be totally transparent, and you have to be on the ball and get back to them. And you can't come across as, well, this is irritating because Mrs. Smith called me on Saturday morning and I wanted to go do whatever. And it's like, no, this is the business that you're in, and your customers are going to be using the pools on the weekend. And you have to be available for them. Does it mean you have to jump in your truck every time somebody calls at 9 o'clock in the morning on Sunday and you got to run over to their pool? Maybe, maybe not. But you've got to be available on the phone. And that is what separates you from the other guys. That is what will make these customers raving fans and go to their neighbors and go, man, you won't believe this. This guy actually does a great job, but he actually answers his phone. And they go, oh, nobody answers their phone anymore. So
I know, it's so true.
it's so true.
I just had somebody that's recently who I was going to send him a document that I have on my website, and they wanted me to text it to him. And I was like, because they go, I don't use email, so just text it to me. And I'm like, I can't even figure out how to do that, first of all. So I'm like, sorry, I'm going to have to email it to you because I don't know how to text a Word document to you. So that's the deal.
Exactly.
So important. So that's the first step we talked about, building a tight route.
Yes.
And so join us for our next episode where we're going to talk about managing expenses, because this is a big one. We'll talk about managing expenses, managing expenses. And that's so important because that prepares you to put the money in there that's going to help you hire your first employee. It's so important. And Fred has some great ideas on this as well. So please join us the next time. And again, if you need help with anything in regards to your online presence or a checklist that you can help, a contractor comparison checklist, I have that on my website too. Just go to mkconsultingservices.com. Thanks again for your time. We truly appreciate it.
A new voice in the industry, a resource for all, education for you. This is Pool Pro Podcast. Build relationships and share important news as we get ready for our next backyard adventure. Pool Pro Podcast. Backyard adventures are better together. Please take a moment to share, like, and review our content with all of those that would be interested.